Okay, with that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. So we're so excited to have Kathy Wolf back. How many of you remember when she was here, I think 3 years ago, was it? Yeah, that was really fun, and we were excited to have her back again. So those who don't know Kathy already, Kathy has built a multi-decade research program at the University of Washington in Seattle about human dimensions of trees and green space in cities with recent focus on nearby nature experiences and human health. Now semi-retired, she continues to be active in research and science outreach. Ongoing publication is aimed at sharing knowledge about nearby nature and health benefits with non-traditional audiences, business, public health, medicine, and urban planning. Kathy has collaborated with international partners and has presented her research at conferences on all continents except Antarctica. Is that still true?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe one day.
Nature and health research is summarized at Green Cities Good Health. That's a website. Thank you.
Thanks, Marissa.
Take this away.
All right. Hey, good morning, everyone. All right, a little more juice there, huh? Good morning, yeah. It's such a pleasure to be back and to help celebrate 40 years of Think Trees. Pretty amazing to see the changes across the industry of green care, tree planting, tree care, urban forestry, the whole bundle. And so what I'm going to do today is to kick things off. You'll be learning so much about tree care, different soils, concerns, safety, and whatnot. But I start with a talk about why. You'll learn a lot about how to do the care and management. But my work has been, and I continue to talk about, why is this so necessary in our communities? So let me kick off with that right away here. All right, so I do come from Seattle. You might have heard a little bit about our team recently, right? Yeah, oh, I hear some boos out there. What? Come on, you gotta be friendly to me, right? I'm a guest. And you may have heard that we have a little rain in Seattle, right? Yeah, like the day I left and it was pouring, and I don't need rain gear here, it's really wonderful. And because of that rain, we have some pretty big trees, and I've enjoyed being out in both urban areas and more wildland areas and having an opportunity to encounter and enjoy those trees. And then, I'm not a climber, but I have friends who are climbing arborists, and once in a while, they kind of elevator me up into a tree, and it's the best time. I really enjoy that. So I appreciate what I come to learn from those experiences is the commitment to safety, the redundancy of materials, the redundancy of the climbing system, and really appreciate that. But Think Trees is 40 years old, my gosh. So I went back, that puts us back at 1986. What was the tech and sort of our, what we had access to in 1986? And some of you might even remember these things, and some of you will go, what is that stuff, right? The phone brick or brick phone. We actually carried those things around if we wanted to talk remotely. We didn't have a landline. And that Chevy Celebrity, when I saw that image, it brought back so many memories because I'm one of 9 children, and we had a wagon like that, and we'd pile the kids in there and some camping gear, and my dad would take us off, and away we'd go. That's probably some of my earliest experiences with nature and appreciation with being outdoors. And then DOS, MS-DOS. How many of you were, trying to work with that as a way to negotiate and work with your computer? Woo, things are so much better now. But I'll share a little bit of my history, and that is I have been doing research for 35 years about nature and how people respond to those outdoor experiences. The background is environmental psychology. Actually started in biology, then morphed to landscape architecture, and then to environmental psychology. And then over the last decade or so, a little over a decade, been concentrating on human health response. And that's what I'll share with you today. Not just my own research, and here's a little bit of a survey of some of the projects and studies that I've done, But this work is now coming from people all over the world. Universities, agencies, nonprofits as collaborators and partners in the research. So it's been elevated both in place and in dimension, and that's what I'll share with you here. First of all, a little bit of overview of the research studies. The first that really got attention, and you probably have all heard about this, Roger Ulrich and the hospital stays. And in 1984, he did this study with people who underwent surgery, and they were randomly assigned to recovery rooms. Some of them had a view of a brick wall out the window. Some of them had a view of trees out the window. Everything else is the same. The care was the same. They had the same surgery. I think it was gallbladder surgery, pain meds, and all of that, all the same. And the people who had a view of trees had shorter stays. They had less pain, fewer minor complications, and the staff judged them as having a better outlook, a better emotion during their stay. That's remarkable, simply a view, a different view of trees. And those studies have been replicated. Other people have said, ooh, I have to try that in my town or my city or my hospital system, to the point now where hospitals, actually they flip the beds so that they design first the hospitals so there are big windows and garden views, and now they're intentionally having patients have this encounter, have this exposure. One of my sisters has been treated for cancer of late, and I didn't visit her, but she's kept us all notified of what's going on. So when she is doing infusion in the chair, and some of you, you might be aware of this, when you're getting the chemo, it's an IV, you sit, you relax. She has a full view, floor to ceiling windows of nature that's been groomed, that's been managed for her experience of nature during this treatment. And this is becoming more and more common. Another historic study that got a lot of attention, this was done by Jeff Donovan, formerly with the Forest Service, not any longer, no more political comment there, but he did this study where there was emerald ash borer disease in counties of Ohio. So he went back and looked at places, this is like a natural experiment, places that had trees, full-grown, nice canopy around residential areas. And then because of the disease that impacts the trees very quickly, they die and they have to be removed because of hazards, of course. He was able to compare across these many counties and neighborhoods health instances or health rates before and after trees, just a matter of a couple of years. So there wasn't a lot of turnover, and you have the same population from time to time. What he found was a higher death rate from cardiovascular disease, a higher death rate from lower respiratory disease. And so he controlled for all sorts of factors, and yet he found pretty much the only factor that changed was the presence of these trees or not. That's remarkable. Got a lot of attention, and again, this sort of study has been replicated in other places. So what we see across all of this work is that trees and the urban canopy, urban forestry, is a social determinant of health. And some of you, maybe you work in a larger NGO, nonprofit, maybe you work in an agency. You may interact with people who are starting to pay attention to this in terms of public health. And so a term that public health officials use is the social determinants of health. So while personal care is important, that circle in the center, the choices we make about food, about physical activity, water that we might drink, there's all sorts of other influences, economic, education, and so on. But to achieve a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, we have to also pay attention to the natural environment. And that's what you do. That's what you do and you're committed to. So I offer to you one of the takeaways here. Think of yourself not only as an arborist or an urban forester or a forest manager, think of yourself as a healthcare provider. That's what you're doing. There are people who are gaining great benefit from the resources that you are helping to place and to manage around them. If you'd like to learn more about this range of healthcare or research outcomes, this is a website that we prepared. It's a little over a decade old, but it still has information that people find valuable. Green Cities, Good Health. There's about a dozen topics there on the left, and for each one of them, there's a longer essay. So if you search Green Cities, Good Health, I have heard that it's valuable, say, for grant proposals, or for newsletters, or for just having some background information to share with people in conversations where you're trying to pitch why your work is important. Then we did more recently, in 2020, collaborated with Health Canada, some other collaborators around the United States, and we did a scoping review. So this is an academic paper where you pull in, you do keyword searches, you find all the articles you possibly can about a topic, in this case, trees and human health. And then you distill, you winnow those out by the science quality, by how closely they align with the topic and so on. So we got about 200 studies about trees and human health response. And they range from everything from cardiovascular to immune system function, to safety, crime in neighborhoods, decreased crime in neighborhoods that have more canopy, and so on. Then, just a little over a year ago, Health Canada came back to me and they said, we'd like to update that research review because we'd like to create some education materials that people can just grab and go with. So here is a report that we did, and if you search this, all of these materials are free, and no paywall. They're free and publicly available. Then Health Canada, they took that content from those 2 reviews, and they've created this package of communication tools. There are slides. Many slides, so you can grab the ones that make sense, or that if you're doing a talk or having to do a presentation. And again, there's room on these slides to take off Health Canada and put your own logo, if that is helpful. They also have done infographics, a bunch of infographics, some little one-page brochures. So there's a lot of content there if you'd like to go and borrow all of that. Here, for instance, is one of the infographics. So you don't see a clear identity of this about Health Canada. And they were very conscious of that because they were hoping all across that country, people in different cities would be able to use this material. And a lot of it is valuable, particularly in the northern United States. But if you sift through, I think you'd find some that is relevant to New Mexico, Arizona, a drier and different type of climate. All right, so that was a very quick sort of overlay of some of the materials, some of the content. What I'd like to do is share with you now a little more of the detail of the science, because I don't know about you, but if you talk about this, as I do way too often, and people ask me, oh, that's really interesting. I've never heard about this before. Nature's good for us? And then they'll say, well, how do you know that? You're a tree hugger. I mean, how do we know this? And then that's when I get to, kind of open up the cannon and go, well, let me tell you. So there have been thousands of studies done all across the world. So let me share a little bit of that. First of all, the pace of publication. So this figure starts, maybe you can read the numbers better than I can. 1970s, and then it moves in where the curve actually starts is about the time that Think Trees started. And then you could see now what's happening. The last number on here is 2019. So this was, again, it was a review. People gathered the articles, English language articles from all over the world, and then they plotted the pace, what's going on here. And it just continues. There's a lot of new investigators, younger people, they're getting grants. It's so cool. I graduated in the mid-90s. way down there, the kind of the bottom of the hockey stick, if you will. Not much to talk about then, but now many topics, many concerns, health concerns that having nature in our environments addresses. All right, then the other comparison. Top map is 1990s, bottom map is 2010s. This shows then the intensity of publication, if you will. So the top map, a lot of this is happening in Northern Europe. It's happening in Japan and South Korea. It's happening in North America and Canada. Now look at that. What we see is greater density, so greater numbers of the articles, and we see more distribution across continents and nations. So again, this work is happening all over the world, and with more and more people bringing more and more knowledge to what we can talk about. I notice some of you are taking pictures of slides. Please do, but I will be sharing these slides with the conference organizers, and I'll hope they'll be able to distribute them if you'd want to go back and take a look and or use them in whatever communications you might be doing. All right, the last slide from this review, when you look at an academic article, there's title, of course, there's abstract, and then there's keywords, and that helps then if people are searching for a topic, those keywords help then to reveal your article to that prospective reader. So this article team, what they did is they took all the keywords and then using an AI software, they generated this, if you will, density image. And what we see here overall are 3 different highlighted topics, one being eco-health in red. And there are a bunch of subtopics, so ecosystem services, sustainability, climate change, all things that were air pollution, all things that are really relevant to human health and that trees have a positive influence. Then we look at physical activity. In the last decade or so, there was a lot of research about, first of all, the importance of physical activity, and I'm not calling it exercise. Exercise suggests a greater level of exertion. Physical activity is as simple as taking the stairs versus the elevator, or going out for a walk, no matter what length. So physical activity was quite important in the health research and associated with trees, because even those modest amounts of activity can have great effect for us in terms of respiratory health, cardiovascular, cancer reduction, stroke reduction, and so on. Then the last one, mental health, the green, stress, depression, all that we're hearing about, people of all ages, sort of working now, not so much, but sort of working on a campus, young people, my gosh, college students, high school students, the mental health concerns that they're feeling now. And so here we see across these 3 big health topics, across this review, the benefits of having trees around your home, around your school, around your workplace. And this, again, there's a variety of ways of expressing and talking about the value of trees. Here we go, human health, very important. What have we learned? Now I'm going to do a little deeper dive, take you down into some specific topics that have surfaced in this research. First of all, what are the different benefits? And I think of this as 3 different categories. The first is therapy. There are now healthcare providers that are actually, after diagnosing someone, it might be, hey, you're on the edge of diabetes, or hey, you have clinical depression. You are so depressed that we have to take some steps to try to help you. Healthcare providers are now using nature experiences as therapy, including forest bathing, forest therapy, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. So if you have a clinically diagnosed condition, trees, nature, outdoors is becoming a therapeutic intervention. Then you might be feeling well. Once in a while, hey, maybe a glum day, or like once in a while I have some ankle issues, I gotta do some stretching and whatnot, but generally I'm doing okay. Having nature around your home is great, or your workplace is great for health promotion, to maintain that high baseline. And this, I think, is taken for granted by too many people. They have no idea, but studies are showing time and time again. You don't have to even be involved in the planting. You don't have to be involved in the management. Just having green around you can be really valuable for health promotion and moving about outdoors as well. And then there's more research of late about, well, all these health concerns, how do we help people flourish? And this is generally in terms of mental health, in terms of physical health. How do we help people flourish? Be their best, be happy, be well. And I'm seeing only a few now, but more and more of these studies about how having green around us promotes flourishing. And to go now, this literature, some of it, reading the articles, academic articles, they're quite complex, and this is a figure to maybe help express the pathways that we see in this science. First of all, what is the element that you encounter? It might be wild, and I'll say I have focused on urban nature, nearby nature, places in cities. There's a whole bundle of research as well about wildland experiences, about going out beyond into the forest, into the desert, into the wildland. That I don't know as much about. But in the city, we have engineered spaces, green stormwater infrastructure, for instance. We have built spaces, of course, courtyards and gardens around buildings. And then we have blends of these different elements. Then there are different influences on our response. The view, what we take in through our visual senses, our visual sense. Nature, what do we take in through audio sense? Sun, vitamin D, getting enough sun. There's some concern now within the health literature about people being so good about using sunblock, they're not getting enough sunlight to generate vitamin D. And then, let's see, I'll move on here. What are physical and mental states or improved behaviors that start to move us to good health? We're more relaxed when we're out in nature. Our immune function can be better. A sense of awe, and studies are showing that actually feeling and expressing awe can be valuable for health response. Then improved behaviors, physical activity, I mentioned that. Weight management. So again, there's kind of a obesity epidemic in our country. It's different around different places of the country, but nonetheless, overall, weight management is quite important. And then social interaction and so on. Finally, on the right side, this is the list. Evidence-based research articles around different places all over the world, North America, our country, where we see greater health outcomes, reduced cardiovascular disease, reduced all-cause mortality, reduced ADHD in children, a handful of studies that have been done where kids who are outdoors and spending routine time outdoors showing reduced ADHD. Anyway, that right column alone I could talk about for a good bit of time, but I won't, I'll move on. We only have an hour, right? All right, this, to show you the importance of what you do and its consequences for people. All right, National Vital Statistics System, so these are the people who gather public health data from all over the country. These are leading underlying causes of death in our country. Heart disease, cancer, unintentional injury, COVID, not so much anymore, it's still there, but not so much, stroke, and so on. Remember what was on the last slide? Almost all of these benefit, or people who have these conditions benefit from nature, having nature around them, nearby nature. Yeah, being around a tree, having canopy, it doesn't eliminate these situations, but it does ease the condition. It maybe reduces the treatment that they need, which has economic consequences for them, for individuals, and for an entire county, state, and nation. Another takeaway is cradle to grave. Entire human life course, green is important for us. Starting there on the left, an infant. There are studies that have been replicated around the world, and they show that if there's a woman who is pregnant and she has green canopy within a couple of 100 yards of her home, healthier baby birth weight. It's remarkable. This is just the presence of trees. All things, holding other things constant, age, education, household income, and so on. Trying to identify what are those other factors that might influence this outcome, and trying to narrow it down and finding that green is important. We move through youth and adolescence, also of importance. We get to middle age, also of importance. Workplace, for instance. Studies are showing that people who have green around their workplace, view out the window, green space for a lunch break or just a work break, more productive, more creative. Very important for businesses and for prosperity. All right, now we're getting over to the right side of the image. I'm in there somewhere. I won't claim. I have one child, a daughter, and she is a wilderness guide in Alaska. And so when I go out with her, she thinks I'm over there in the right, just sitting in the chair, right? Come on, Mom, come on. Let's get going here. But I think I'm a little closer maybe to the middle there. Anyway, really important across the life cycle. What the studies also show, and this is because we have such ready access to GIS, is disparities in the distribution of the trees and green. And not so long ago, I talked to urban planners, and not so long ago, that was like, oh, what's the big deal? You know, trees, gardens, it's about beauty. Now we know it's really important for everyone. And so there are many communities. I tried to look this up for Albuquerque and wasn't able to find it. But after analysis, then there are planting programs. Hey, where are we going to plant trees in the future? How do we create more balance? How do we equalize things a little bit more in terms of access to nature? And we have a break after this. If any of you know about this here in Albuquerque, please let me know. I'm always attuned to that in different communities. Where are they working to bring more nature to more people? All right, all this is good for us, right? But how much? How often? Just as a healthcare provider, a doctor, maybe a nurse practitioner, physician assistant, they might, we've got to take care of you here. Let's talk about any sort of treatments. What about nature treatments, dosage? And what the articles are suggesting, they're not consistent, but they're suggesting about a 20 to 30-minute session outdoors brings a great level of value or a great level of healing or therapy. And I've read articles that say as little as 5 minutes, particularly if you've been doing a stress or very focused activity, 5 minutes is helpful. But 20 to 30 minutes seems to be a good recommendation. And then just as with a medical prescription, you don't just take it one time and, hey, we're all done. It has to be repeated. There has to be a durability of effect. And what the studies are suggesting is about 120 minutes a week. And you might do it all that at once. I enjoy kayaking. I go out for several hours at a time. But I also try to do near daily walks of about 30, 40 minutes. So building this into lifestyle, building this into routine is what can be very valuable for people. And then, so what type of nature? Well, the studies, now the researchers are burrowing in part because they have more grant money and more support for this, but they're really deep diving into the different situations with specific health outcomes. But generally what we see is any green is of value. Be it, understanding the broad canopy across a city, such as Albuquerque, I understand. Talked to someone last night. I think the canopy is about 14% here. Does that seem right? And I was told that maybe the goal is to boost it. So 24, 23, 24%. Ambitious, right? But that's what cities everywhere are doing. It might be a streetscape. It might be the general canopy. It might be a wildland, not really wildland, conserved landscape wild-ish, like say along the river here in the city. It might be a part of the tree plantings and the activity that goes with tree planting and the social connections. It might be in green schoolyards. So that's another thing is I'm seeing as part of the dosage research is a concentration of planting. Where might we generate the most benefit with this investment? Schoolyards, hospitals, healthcare, elder care centers. So thinking about, rather than the broad canopy number, how to dig in and generate the greatest level of benefit. So I am thinking about, oh, wrong direction, let's go forward here. Let me leave you with a metaphor then, with all of what I've shared, but I'm just touching the surface of all of this. I think of nature experiences being equivalent to nutrition, because we occasionally have a memorable feast, wonderful, hopefully wonderful experience with loved ones and friends, special foods, take a lot of time and so on. For me, that's going to Alaska to visit my daughter. It's a memorable feast, if you will. We have these nice meals at a restaurant or a gathering, a potluck. That too is really valuable for our social experiences and our health. But what we need is nutritious everyday meals. We need everyday nature. We need those opportunities, and we, not only in this room, but people who live in cities everywhere. We need that connection and that opportunity to connect to green. All right, they told me I was the lead off. I had a full hour. I've taught university courses, a full hour lecture. Oh, doesn't go well, right? I'm going to take just a short break here, not meaning you get up or move or anything. Any questions? Any questions? I'll take a couple of questions about what I've talked about. Yes, please. Yes.
So planting more trees, upping the actual canopy by 10% or whatever.
Yes.
How will that affect the water table?
The question was about canopy goals, planting more trees, the water table here. How will that affect the water table? I frankly, I don't know. I don't have that knowledge. What I would say is probably there are people in this room, maybe even some talks, where thinking judiciously about what is planted where and that water use. So you probably have I know you have much better knowledge than I do about water use, species selection, survivability, as well as what we'll hear about later, soils, mulching, and so on. So think of this tactically. It's tactical about water, it's tactical about healthcare, and think about the stacked benefits. So any single tree or grove of trees, be they conserved or planted, what is the array of benefit potential that they might provide? And then what can one do with that?
Okay.
Yes? Yeah.
So we do have, it's long been out of print, but I can send people a PDF, and I think you may still be able to find it on the internet. I don't know where it might work. But there's a one-page trifold that really looks at the cost benefit of Albuquerque trees and really does a nice job of summarizing those. There's a nice thing here that was passed out with friendly clients.
Yeah. So he called to attention, so some years ago, Greg McPherson, scientist with the Forest Service, he had a lab in Davis, California, was doing cost-benefit analysis of urban trees in various regions and states around the western US. And his team generated these really great reports that illustrated why it's important to have not only trees, but large trees in our environment, because the rate of benefit escalates as trees age, to a point, as you well know. Then they become less healthy and the benefits and also the care, the benefits decline and the care requirements increase. But that's a great reminder. Those were done, what, 15, 20 years ago, but it's still really valuable information.
It was published in 2007 and has been out of print for a long time. Greg had said that they could possibly reprint them, but I don't believe that'll ever happen.
Yeah, well, they won't be redoing the analysis, but I have found those PDFs, so maybe we look about and see if we can
I
find
think
them.
the numbers have changed because the cost of electricity and whatnot has changed, but you know, the ratio of benefit to cost is probably pretty comparable.
Yeah. One more?
Okay.
Okay.
So when we're dealing with like either municipalities, in our specific situation, a university, we're like selecting a new president, what kind of questions or how might we identify candidates for presidential selection or leadership what kind of questions might we ask to see whether they understand the importance of tree canopies and nature spaces within those communities, municipalities, and organizations?
Yeah, really important question. And let's see, because University of Washington, we recently selected a new president, and frankly, trees and the campus, didn't get a lot of attention in the vetting process. But he's a person that is committed to the care and stewardship, not only of research programs and curriculum quality, but the quality of life of the staff, students, and faculty. So that might be your in, is to talk about how universities are a human resource. It's a brain power and generation of innovation, generation of business. It is, and trees and nature are a human resource. So you might talk about it in that way, is plants need to be here and they need to be cared for because. And I've often encountered that arborists and urban foresters in particular, they start talking about ecosystem services, so air quality, water quality, stormwater, whatever. Really important, but it seems health is often a really kind of personal hook. It's a personal, that would benefit me, that would benefit my family fairly directly. So you might then talk, you might drill in just a little bit about students in particular. The mental health of students on college campuses, it's rubbish right now. And I have colleagues who have set up a national network of nature therapy on university campuses. So they're doing activities that either part of curriculum or extracurricular activity, getting students, not kids anymore, but get students out on the campus and introduce a sense of appreciation for time out there and what they might benefit from it. So that might be a starter. All right, I'm going to continue now because mental health has been getting a lot of attention in this research and in public health communications. So let me just share a little there. By the way, I don't think I've ever spoken in such a wonderful garden setting before. This is really gorgeous. And what I'm finding is I move over to the pine, and I move over to something else, and I'm getting some aromatherapy here. All right, mental health and function. There are so many challenges to us. Again, whether we are clinically suffering from mental health or whether just everyday stuff gets to us, greater confusion, people are expressing higher anxiety, greater fear. Fear is something that is a consequence of not being able to cope and manage your everyday environment. And the treatment, the people who do treatment, the care community are realizing that a lot of the approaches that they have taken are not doing so well, or they're not taking patients to full healing or to full capacity again of their abilities. So this is where trees and health, nature and health is starting to get a foothold in the psychological psychotherapy world. And I have a friend / colleague, Mark Berman. He's at the University of Chicago. He is a tree and nature neuroscientist. He actually has this cool lab, bunch of really, really smart graduate students. And they actually wire people up with different types of sensors, show them different types of nature, different expressions of nature, trees, forests, gardens, and maps then how our brains respond. And they do respond differently. If we're say we're in an urban setting and there's a view of a garden or a green street versus barren, meaning only buildings, they do see differences in how our brains respond. What Mark has found out is these responses happen. You don't even have to like nature. You don't even have to be aware of these sorts of reactions. They're happening. We are hardwired. The term used for this is biophilia, the biophilia hypothesis, where we have evolved over many, many, many years to be reliant on the natural environment. And we have been, we are now for food, water, shelter, and whatnot, but we were more directly in the past. So that seems to perhaps have an influence on how our minds connect to green and our bodies. And so there's a lot of concern now about, again, mental health. Walking in nature is part of studies that are being done to help alleviate this. In this study, Greg Bratman, he's a colleague of mine at University of Washington, he had people out walking outdoors quietly, solo, 90-minute walks, and what he found is this deep improved mental processing, but the rumination. I know some of you are into wildlife, maybe you're hunters. Rumination, what does that bring to mind? Deer or cows, right? The cud and all of that. This is different rumination. This is mental rumination, where when we are down, when we're depressed, we tend to get into a negative spiral of thought. Oh my gosh, why didn't I do that? What did they say about me? And what he found is that when people are outdoors in this situation, they lift out of that cycle of negative thought. They lift out of rumination. And that can be really valuable in then giving you the room, giving you the opportunity to better cope with whatever challenges are coming at you. And I am in, or was in, a college of forestry, and I had a lot of colleagues who are ecologists, trees, wildlife, soils, water, and so on. And they didn't treat me very well with regard to my research in urban and social science. Wow, urban social science. But now they are all in. Ecologists now, hey, we would like to study biodiversity. We would like to know how the environments that we are promoting and managing might also have an influence on people. So here's one study about biodiversity and mental health. They use vegetation cover and bird abundance as a proxy for ecological diversity. And what they found was less depression, less anxiety, less stress with certain levels of vegetation cover. What I find interesting about this is Albuquerque, if you're at about 14% cover, but that's variable, right? There's some places where there's probably very few trees, other places where there's more dense canopy. Pursuing these numbers, maybe in residential areas, maybe around schools, again, maybe around healthcare facilities, might be a secondary way of offering treatment. So again, being tactical where things are planted and who is being served by those plantings. All right, so many things that can come at us. On the left there, the last few days before traveling here, I was working on a journal article, and that's how I felt at the end of the day. I can't look at this screen anymore. So there's so many everyday things that have an effect on our mental health, including information overload. There's just so much coming at us now, and to process all that, to understand it, to try to make sense of it, or even to decide, no, I'm not going to read that, or I'm not going to listen to that. It takes a lot of our attention. It takes a directed effort to be able to pay attention to all that we need to do or all that comes at us. And we lose cognitive capacity to continue to pay attention. Outcomes are frustration. We become more compulsive, maybe more, even more aggressive, perhaps. What is the solution here? Nature, duh, you knew it was coming, right? But outdoors, again, being tactical, not just providing that garden green space, but thinking about how its composition and how it can better help people. So being away, stepping away from the computer, getting away just outside the office building, getting just outside the classroom. Extent that there's enough room for you, yourself, maybe others, that you feel you have enough space within that nature. Compatibility, that it has the features that help you feel comfortable. Sitting spaces, the surfaces of walkways, and so on. I mean, this is getting into garden design, landscape design, and so on. But the one that's really key is soft fascination, that there are elements within this green space that you don't have to intentionally focus on. They draw you in without effort. They take you there in a place that relaxes those cognitive capacities and prepares you then to step back in to where there is that demand, where you do have to focus and you do have to produce. So soft fascination, what might that be? What are the pieces of it? I'm looking at some of it right here. Wow. Foliage variety, look at that, all the different textures. Flowers, different flowers capture your attention. If we were outdoors, maybe in the right place, pollinators, watching insects or wildlife moving through a landscape, wind through the trees, clouds, so on. All of these things, they tend to draw our attention if we relax, if we settle out and allow this to happen. And so being away doesn't mean having to go way out beyond the city somewhere, to the mountains, to the desert, to the forest, in my case, to the shoreline, but it's what can we provide immediately around us. Thanks, Marisa. And now, what is also getting attention is forest therapy and forest bathing. And I first heard about this about a decade ago, and I was like, oh, that sounds kind of woo-woo, right? But it is, again, the research is really sound that this amount of time, it's typically 60, 90 minutes. There are certified guides that lead people through the activity, and it's reflective, it's contemplative. A little over a year ago, I was invited to do a talk at a forest therapy conference in South Korea. And the Korean Forest Ministry, equivalent to our Forest Service, has now installed across the country in different public forest areas these forest bathing stations. And you can attend, you can come there for a few days, there's overnight, or you come there for a day visit. This is not a spa. This is rustic, if you will, and there are guides and there are a variety of activities, but it's very intentional to be quiet, contemplative, to appreciate and to take in your surroundings. And the benefits, so many benefits. Mental health, physical health, people who are together in these spaces, loved ones, friends, social connections, reinforcing and establishing social connections, and so on. So this has now been lifted and becoming, again, an accepted therapeutic practice, more and more places, healthcare places. Recently, a high school teacher contacted me, and we talked about maybe doing research with high school students that are taking a little time out of their classrooms, and they've created a garden, and might that be their forest bathing area. I've been working with a woman who is on faculty at a school of education in Texas, Trinity University, and she is introducing forest bathing to her students, not as a class, but as an activity as she is teaching young people how to become teachers. And she's had them journal across the course of the class their experience. And what she's told me now, having looked at their materials for a while, they start out going, what is this? Forest bathing or nature bathing? What is this? I have more important things to do. I have a lot of stuff to do. This takes too much time. And by the end, they're talking about how this is one of the most important parts of their life as a student. And the place where they settle in, called a sit spot, the sit spot has become important to them as a place to go, relax, recharge, and so on. So again, it's not only a one-time activity, can be with benefit, but again, it becomes part of lifestyle. It becomes part of what you just do for self-care. And there are studies about youth in particular, adolescents, young people. Increased nature connection, yes, but reduced anxiety, reduced rumination, reduced skepticism. Sometimes when I'm overhearing, not talking to them, but overhearing students on campus, so snarky, right? So the level of skepticism, and can you blame them on what's going on around the world right now? But this seems to help, kind of lift them out of that social and personal rumination. All right, again, let's see. I'm going to pass on this one. I have only a few minutes to wrap this up. But I will be around through the day. If you do have questions or comments, please pull me aside and let's chat. All right, research to action. I hope I've convinced you that this is indeed worth talking about. It's evidence-based. You are healthcare providers. There's no question. But what do we do with this information in the various roles that you have? Again, maybe you're an arborist. Maybe you're with an agency. Maybe you're with a nonprofit. But you have the opportunity to talk to people about why this is important and what to do about it. And you are people of action. That's what I take away from these conferences. You do things. You get out in the world and you move stuff and you make things happen. So I think you're a particularly great audience, great industry, set of industries to start to carry this word out there. The importance of planning. So bringing this not only from individual yards or parcels or businesses to a broader community, be it a neighborhood, be it the city, state, whatever you can do at different scales, where you fit in that scale. Heat and thermal comfort, lots of study going on. I have not talked about it at all, but there's a lot of great information now digging into the selection of plants, where they're placed, and how to best affect thermal comfort. Not only the temperature itself, but people's perception about their comfort within those spaces. I understand that air quality is one of the key public health issues here in New Mexico. Again, I don't know as much about that, but there are people who are studying, again, how can vegetation and trees be tactically placed and oriented to help alleviate the amount of particulates in the air that we might take in. Physical activity, I've talked about that, the importance of being out and moving, even in modest ways. Mental health, how do we provide these spaces for people to encounter nature in a relaxed way and to experience soft fascination within their environment? So the variety, the biodiversity, the range of types of places. What did I do? I didn't, okay. How many have heard about 330-300? A few of you. Take a look. There, Cecil Kanindijk, he is an urban forester / urban planner based in Holland, but he works all over the world. And a few years ago, he put this out as a possible goal for urban planners. It's simple. It's easy to remember. 330-300. 3 trees. Every person should be able to see 3 large trees, mature trees, maybe not large, mature trees from their home. Everyone should have 30% tree canopy. Everyone should be able to access a park or open space within 300 meters or 300 yards of their home. Ambitious. I also realize this may not be as relevant for this particular bioclimate as it is, say, for more northern temperate climates. But still, it's a set of numbers that urban planners are taking up, and we're starting to see in some communities, this is becoming part of comprehensive plans. Not just the forest management plans, but comp plans more broadly. So maybe this is something you can use in that communications. Another meme, if you will, is the nature pyramid. And not unlike food pyramid, the general concept is, what do we need as our baseline? High frequency experiences of nature at small scale, at our neighborhood, and maybe they happen hourly or daily at the very least. And then we move up to, at the peak up there, more remote, less often, broader scale, maybe travel in other places of the country or international. So thinking about the place where you work or where your job is or where the contract is and how it might satisfy some place, some location within that nature pyramid. And in that way, it contributes to the connectivity. It contributes to the range of experiences that people might have in nature. Then some work that I've been doing with, again, I'm an affiliate faculty at the University of British Columbia. They have now a master's in urban forest leadership. And working with the faculty there, we've done a few articles about urban planning, and this is one. There's the citation. There's no paywall on this. This is one that you can download as well and read without cost. We have tried to say, if we're planting trees, again, how can we do so in a way that promotes the types of experiences that I'm talking about for health? And one is the views from within, so that would be the part of the 3,300. Then there's creating refuge, so particularly for heat. We're not looking at just a canopy, a spray of trees across a community, but how do we create pockets of trees that are refuge and that there might be connectivity, there might be connections so that people can move from these islands, if you will, more comfortable islands from place to place within a city. That's more urgent here in this climate. There are other types of refuge in other climates. So rain, for instance, or avoiding flooding and whatnot. How do we with more intention, place trees for various outcomes? And connectivity is so important for physical activity. I'm also a cyclist, and I enjoy hiking. And when I go to a city, I like to go out and walk about, and I get so frustrated when the sidewalk goes a little distance and it ends, or the bike lane goes half a mile and then it ends. Thinking about connectivity of what we plant and where it is and how it blends together. And can we include forest bathing? Might there be forest bathing little nodes or stations, if you will, within these systems? Whereas this practice, this idea becomes more common, how might people readily find those spaces and begin to identify them as part of their as part of where they live and thrive. All right, here we are. Last thoughts. What have I talked about? You are healthcare providers, absolutely, no question. We have thousands of studies. I continue to monitor this research. My collection, my personal collection of articles is now about 10,000. 10,000. And nature and health then is real. When I started all of this some time ago, people questioned it. Is that really? No, it can't be. We know. And there's quite a range and depth of this science, including mental health benefits. And now I turn this to you to plan and design for using trees for human health, for better communities, for the people that we serve and the clients that we hope to improve their conditions, their lives, and their places. So thank you very much. Appreciated the opportunity to be here.